مشاهدينا لقاء جديد بطل عليكم اليوم عبر شاشة مريم تي في. بيسعدني بهالمناسبة ببرنامج سفرة مع سفير استضيف سعادة السفير الأسترالي في لبنان السيد غلين مايلز. صباح الخير.
صباح نور.
كيف الصحة؟
منيح.
منيح. سعادة السفير أهلا وسهلا فيك باستوديو مريم تي في. بنحكي عربي، نتكلم الفصحى العربية الفصحى أو نتكلم or in English.
أصلا في إنجليزي عشان أنا درست عربي وبنحكي شوي عربي، لكن
وين
درست
درست
في
العربي؟
زمان في القاهرة.
القاهرة.
لكن في زمان بنحكي شوي عربي.
قد إيه أخذتك وقت لتتعلم اللغة؟
لغة عربية، لغة فصحى وعامية.
الفصحى والعامية. How long did it take for you to learn the Arabic language?
It took me I studied for about 18 months.
10 months. Wow.
But then لكن بعدين أنا نسيت كتير.
نسيت كتير لأنه no practice.
خصوصا في لبنان عشان ناس كتير بنحكي فرنساوي وإنجليزي. So yeah, it's not the best country to practice your Arabic in.
Yeah, sure. First, you're most welcome in Plateau Mariam TV. We are really honored to have you among us today, and you're gonna take us in a virtual trip to Australia.
Yeah,
if you don't
that's
mind.
the plan. I'm going to try and take everyone to Australia.
Right.
It's a long trip, normally by aircraft, so we'll try and do it.
It's a long trip indeed. We have to be patient, but it's worth it.
Yes.
Just when we go to Australia, we're gonna find the beauty and the magic of the land. Geographically speaking, to start on the map of Australia, can you tell us more about the frontiers, borders, and where it is?
Okay, well, Australia is the smallest continent, but the largest island in the world, and the sixth largest country
Number
as
6
well.
in the world.
But it's the smallest continent, and it sits by itself. Most people can pick it out on a map. When you look at a globe, it's down in the Pacific. So the east coast is on the Pacific Ocean, and the west coast is on the Indian Ocean. And it's the big landmass below the equator. So we're well and truly in the southern hemisphere.
Nice. The capital is Canberra, and the biggest city is Sydney. Can you tell us more about it?
So Sydney is the oldest city in Australia. When Europeans first settled Australia back in 1788, they arrived into Sydney, or they started off in Botany Bay, which is a bit south of Sydney.
There is a short video about Sydney. As you talk,
Yes.
we're going to watch it.
And then they moved up to Sydney, and so Sydney is the oldest capital, or the oldest city in Australia. And has a population of about 4.8 million at the moment, but is growing rapidly. We have a very high migration rate.
إذا شريت الفيديو لسيدني نحن وعم نحكي مع سعادة السفير بنشوفه على
Okay, we can look at the video.
Yes.
And it's a very beautiful city, because one of the reasons they chose it was because of the harbour that it has, the natural harbour. And so you have,
wow,
here
this
we can
is
see
amazing.
here the amazing water, the water views, and the harbour.
The largest global city, right?
Yes, it's the largest. After that, we have Melbourne, which is almost very close to Sydney in terms of population. But it's one of the, as I said, one of the oldest cities. It's quite a hilly region, quite hilly, and beautiful beaches as well, and a vibrant city centre.
And the blue sky days. And
yeah,
the nice shining
the weather, I tell
sun.
people the weather is very similar to
Wow.
Beirut.
Wow, amazing.
So it's very similar to Beirut in terms of it's quite humid in summer. It probably gets a bit more rain in summer than Beirut does. And in winter it doesn't get too cold. It's usually 15 to 17
It's not a dry
degrees.
winter.
Yeah, it's reasonably dry, and at the moment we have a drought, so it's drier than normal. But it's very temperate sort of. Yeah, I would say if you're looking in the Middle East, the closest sort of comparison in terms of weather would be Beirut, and I think that's why we have so many Lebanese migrate to.
We have some similarities.
Very, yeah.
For later on, we're going to talk about the Lebanese community in Australia.
Yes, yep.
Talking about weather and climate, His Excellency, what's the climate season in Australia?
Well, this is
they say we have the dry winter and the very hot summer.
Well,
and
this is the problem, because Australia is so big. To give you an idea, it's Lebanon would fit into Australia 700 times. So
wow.
That gives you an idea of how big Australia is. But that means we have a very varied climate. So in the south, in Tasmania, you have a climate similar to say, parts of Europe, it's a bit cooler climate, cooler Mediterranean climate, you describe it as. Then Victoria is probably similar. And so you get winters, cool winters. We don't get snow in any of the capital cities
Not
or
at
the
all.
state cities.
Yes.
Only in the mountains we'll get snow, but none of the cities actually have recorded significant snowfalls. But then once you start going up towards Sydney, and from Sydney north, it becomes subtropical. So the climate...
The savannah, it's very warm.
Yeah, this is on the coast. So most
Yes.
people live on the coast, so it's subtropical. So it's you get very dry, like the difference in temperature isn't great.
It's kind of desert weather?
No, that's it. Desert is in the centre. So I'll get
Yes.
to... But on the coast, it tends to be tropical. And the further north you go, it turns into the tropics.
Yeah.
So essentially it's 6 months of dry season, 6 months of the wet season.
Yes.
But the temperature doesn't vary. It's usually, say, 25 to 30 most days. Once you move inland, then a large expanse of the country is arid and semi-arid and very deserty. So when you fly over Australia, you look down, you see a lot of desert. And of course there it's hot and
Which
dry.
area is better? You can see moderate weather and 4 seasons typically.
Down the southeast. So Melbourne and Sydney and Canberra in particular are probably the cities that most identify with the change in seasons. Once you hit Brisbane and certainly Darwin and Cairns, you're looking at a tropical weather system, so it doesn't get cool.
So this is amazing. We have una mezcla, a mixture of weather in Australia.
Yeah, I think people here assume that Australia, because it was settled by Europeans, has that it has a climate similar to Europe. And
Yeah.
I always say to people, no, it's not the same as Europe. It's more, parts of it is desert, parts of it is tropical, and then parts of it is sort of a Mediterranean climate.
Where do you live in Australia?
I grew up in Melbourne, which is the second largest city in Australia. But of course now, being a diplomat and working for the government, I live in the capital, which is Canberra.
Yeah, this is amazing. You're most welcome here to Lebanon. Talking about government, what's the structure now in Australia? Can you tell us?
Yeah, we have a federal system. So Australia is one of the...
Federal parliamentary system.
Federal parliamentary system.
Yeah.
So we have 6 states and 2 territories. And then, so each of the states have their own government, as does the territories as well. And then we have a federal government that looks after certain aspects of the country. So foreign policy, defence policy. But the states have primary running on, say, education and health, although the federal government has tried to unify some of the standards.
This education part we're going to cover with you later on.
So,
Yes.
so yeah, the federal system, we have, you know, having seen an election here in Lebanon and seeing how the election system works here, we have a sort of a unique system. We have compulsory voting for a start, so everyone has to vote. If you don't vote, you're fined. But that encourages a very strong democratic
Sorry, starting from which age?
Starting
14?
from 18.
18.
Yeah,
Yes.
so you have to be 18 to vote.
Yes.
And as I said, it's compulsory. So on
It's
Saturday,
compulsory.
Yep, and our elections are once every 3 years. So every 3 years, what happens is you Saturday mornings you go down to the local school, because that's usually the polling area, and you vote. But it's a good feeling because everyone has to show up. So it's a very
They are
light
taking
party.
part in the destiny of a country.
Exactly.
This
So-
is amazing.
And then we have 2 houses of parliament in the federal system. We have the lower house.
The
or the
Senate?
House of no, this is the House of Representatives,
Okay.
which forms the government, and that's about 160 parliamentarians. And we have the Senate, which is roughly half the size, and the Senate has 12 members from each state.
And
elected.
women has make a difference in the Senate, looking back to history.
Yeah, no, so we have this unique system. So the House of Representatives, it's essentially the small electorates all around Australia, and we have a preferential system. So what we have to do is write down the preferences of who you wish to vote for. So you order them 1, 2, 3 and 4. So you end up with, as we would say, it's the person most liked as opposed to, or least disliked, I think is the best way of describing it.
Or we can say it's a high tailored system.
Yeah, and then the Senate is, each state gets 12 representatives, and it's a proportional system. So you get a lot more varied parties in the Senate rather than the House of Representatives. But the government comes from the party which has the largest numbers, or the majority in the lower house or in the representatives, and then the cabinet ministers come from the parliamentarians. So unlike in Lebanon, where they're appointed often from outside the parliament, in Australia they have to come from within the parliament, whether it's from the House of Representatives or the Senate. So our current minister is from the House of Representatives, but in the past we've had senators as well.
His name is?
We've got a female woman foreign minister, Julie Bishop, who's been foreign minister since 2013.
Raising the umbrellas of women issues.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, strong focus on supporting gender equality.
That's amazing. His Excellency, if you're going to talk about the official language in Australia, it's English, as we all know. But any other native languages or dating back to Aborigine people?
Well, yeah. So
and now we have a video for this occasion.
Yeah, so English is the largest or the official language, but the Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islander people who
في شريط فيديو كمان نحن هلا بنشوفه عبر شاشة مريم تي في عن السكان الأصليين لأستراليا.
who first occupied Australia and have been there for 60,000 years at least. So they're the original inhabitants. They have many languages, and so it depends on which region. So
the native inhabitants in Australia.
Yes. Yeah. So they have many different languages, and I think there was a risk that they were not dying out, but certainly they weren't encouraged to be used. But that's changed over the last 30 to 40 years. So there's been a revival in Aboriginal languages, and in particular place names. So, for instance, we just saw Uluru, which was previously called Ayers Rock, but they changed the name back in the 80s to Uluru.
This is amazing.
So yeah, so this is sort of up in the northern part of Australia.
Looking at such native roots,
it
makes you feel that you are alive.
It's probably the oldest continuous civilization in the world, the indigenous Australians.
And we feel that we are still stuck to nature. We have some roots going to nature.
Yes, yeah, and some of the art, the rock paintings in Western Australia date back 30 to 40,000 years. It's an incredible history that you find there.
The rock painting is still skyrocketing. Is it still current nowadays?
They do some, but in those caves, it's now a museum. It's a living museum in the caves.
Yes.
But Aboriginal artwork has taken off. It's a big, amazing pictures. They use dots, a lot of dot paintings. And it's become very big around the world. So
how many are they per percentage?
So it depends, but yeah, around 300,000.
Yes.
But it's spread across Australia. So there's still, obviously some are fully integrated.
They take part. Do they take part in election and have normal citizenship rights?
Yeah. So in 1969 we passed changed our constitution to allow Indigenous Australians to vote and take on full citizenship. And so what we've seen since then is a strong support for Indigenous issues in Australia.
What kind of support do they give them, the country?
We give educational support. Again, it depends where they are. So obviously many Indigenous Australians are fully integrated and live in cities, but a lot still live in rural areas and remote areas. So for the communities in remote areas, the government provides various forms of
assistance. And do they handle positions in the government, for instance? Or
yes, no, we have Indigenous Australians across all sectors of government. They're big in sports, and quite a few in academia as well. So, and of course in growing in business. And then you have the communities themselves, which own and operate tourist sites or have leased out their land for mining or resource operations, and a lot working in agriculture as well.
This is a special umbrella for them, or a special fingerprint.
Yeah,
They have their own identity in Australia.
Yeah, and gives Australia a unique place in the world, and it's, you know, I think, you know, the Aboriginal flag is a very special flag.
Yeah.
It's we have two peoples. We have the Torres Strait Islanders as
We
well.
always see the kangaroo symbol.
Ah, yes, the kangaroo. Yeah,
Yes.
so the kangaroo is a national animal. So
Yes.
and we have it's on our coat
It
of
has
arms.
the Australian citizenship.
Yes, it has. Well, it's a marsupial, so you only find marsupials in Australia and parts of New Guinea, and of course they're pouched.
Is it becoming a rare species or not?
No,
Or still?
and it depends. There's a range of kangaroo sizes, so from small ones,
Yes.
although they have different names. So we have wallabies as well, which are smaller kangaroos. But your big eastern grey kangaroos, they're very common, and where I live in Canberra, you can see them
Where can we
quite
find them, His Excellency?
pretty much all across Australia.
Wow.
You'll see them in most parts of Australia. You'll see whether it's a
Once I saw a
wallaby.
kangaroo crossing the road.
Yeah.
Was it a movie or it's true?
That's true.
Does it happen
Yeah,
really?
it's true. Like
Wow.
I mean, you won't see them in the centre of Sydney or in the centre of Melbourne, but certainly where I'm in Canberra, you'll see them in populated areas. So, for instance, near us,
Is it a
there's
domestic
park.
animal or?
No, they're wild.
They are
So
not.
wild. Yeah, so they're
Oh my
wild
God.
animals. But they don't hurt you or attack you, or
Yeah.
you know,
They don't attack.
No, they don't attack. So and they're beautiful animals to look at.
Yeah.
Very fast, and they normally just will, if they see
They
you,
are
they
very
normally
tall.
stop.
They are top models.
Yeah, but they range. As I said, there's some smaller
It
wallabies, and there's some tall ones as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they're not endangered. They're right across Australia, and in Canberra, I've seen them hop down the street.
So the Animal Association is not putting strict rules in order to kill them or do something
No,
or restrict their move.
Yeah,
for instance.
there are programs occasionally to control the populations, particularly when we have, say, droughts, and so they start coming to the cities because they can be dangerous for traffic. So you know, if you hit a kangaroo, then it
Yeah.
will do damage to your car and can
Oh
do
my
damage to
God.
the people. So, but yeah, they're majestic animals. And again, all the Australian animals, and I think this is something people don't realise, the native Australian animals are marsupials.
Yeah.
So marsupials have a pouch. So we have kangaroos.
And does it entail the baby?
Yeah, so the baby
Yes.
sits in the pouch, but whether it's a kangaroo or a wombat or a koala, they
Wow.
all have pouches. We also have two of the oldest forms of sort of animals in the world, which is the echidna and the platypus. Now, the platypus is this gets a bit scientific, but the platypus is a monotreme, and the echidna. So what they do is they're mammals, but they lay eggs. So the platypus is like a cross between a bird and a fish.
Nice.
and a normal animal. So they swim in the water, but they have a beak like a duck, but they lay eggs like a bird,
Wow.
but they suckle their young like
What a
another
mixture.
animal. So it's an amazing animal. the
Creation,
platypus.
let's say.
But we also have a huge bird population in Australia.
Now, talking about kangaroos, I'm sorry for interruption,
Yeah.
His Excellency. We're gonna watch the movie, the link, and then get back to
Okay,
you.
yep. So
Okay. This is really amazing, and we can see the magic of this land, really, His Excellency. If we're going to move to the industry, key industrial zones or key industry in Australia, we know that there is the data processing equipment and the mining industry, petroleum, gas production, And the partners are mainly China, South Korea. What can you tell us more?
Okay, well, Australia, because we sit where we are, we're not part of any exclusive trade zone. So we're not part of the EU. We're not part of North Asia, and we're not part of Northeast Asia.
And the EU is highly collaborating with you.
Yeah. So because of that, Australia is very focused on free trade. We consider having a free trade agreements and the liberalisation of trade rules across the world as important, because we don't have a natural constituency in our area. So for that reason, we're very focused on building up our trade relations through free trade agreements with other countries. Obviously, positioned where we are and with the natural resources that we have, our biggest trading partners tend to be in Northeast Asia. So
China comes first?
China, Japan and South Korea are the three key partners for us.
And the European Union?
And then the European Union, and the US obviously is a big partner as well.
Yes.
And also the Gulf. India is a growing market. So, and it depends on what you're looking at. So we have, obviously for us, resources is one of our big exports. So export a lot of coal, iron ore, aluminium and gas are probably the four big ones, but a range of resources, from when you get a battery with the lithium in it, often comes from Australia.
And what's about the medications, medicaments?
Yeah, so we have a pharmaceutical industry as well, but we tend to be more the higher end rather than mass production. We focus on being that niche sort of supporter. So in most of Australian industry, we don't have the population or the market to be able to compete with the bigger countries. So we have to, like Lebanon, I guess, we have to look for niche areas where we can really specialise.
We have to enhance.
And add for our expertise. And so in medical research, we're one of the leading countries in the world. We have a very strong medical sector. Education, we're a huge education market. We're third in the world. I think there's the
Education
US.
Is focused on this market?
Yeah, so education is focused on, I'm talking higher education. We see that as an industry. And so we are I think the third highest country for international students in the world. So you have the US.
The academic, excuse me, His Excellency, the academic system is very important, especially it's polarizing a lot of foreigners. What's the secret?
Yeah, so I think the key secret is to have good institutions.
Yes.
So, as I said, we're the third in the world, so the US is the first, then the UK, and then ourselves.
Wow.
And so you need good, strong institutions. Our universities are world class. We have quite a few universities in the top 100 in the world.
In all sectors?
Across all sectors. We have a very strong research focus. And they're public. Most of them are public universities, so they're at least partly funded by the government.
And those public universities are for all foreigners or only for locals?
No, for a mix.
For
So there's both locals and
any hard or difficult
students.
Conditions to join, or no?
No, it's so long as you can meet the requirements, then
Yes.
then you can get in. And it's we have that variety of places to live. So you can live in Melbourne, which is a very cosmopolitan city, and live right in the centre, or you can work in or study in Cairns, which is focused on, say, marine biology, and live in a lovely beach environment, or on the Gold Coast where it's it's almost
in
summer
which
all year.
university did you study?
I studied in Victoria at Deakin
Wow.
University. So, but there's a lot of good universities right across Australia, and we see it as an important part of both our educational system, but also about who we are. So investing in universities is very important for the government, and encouraging private investors. And that's why having international students is so good, because they contribute themselves, both create an industry, but they also contribute by through their work and their backgrounds and their research. And that helps Australia. So we have a very strong migration policy as well.
His Excellency, thank you for covering part one of this episode. We will come back to you shortly after the break. مشاهدينا بريك صغير ونرجع لكم. مشاهدينا رجعنا لكم من البريك تنغطي هذا اللقاء نحن وسعادة سفير أستراليا السيد غلين مايلز. His Excellency Mr. Glenn Miles. Again, you're most welcome in Plateau Mariam TV.
شكرا.
شكرا أهلا وسهلا فيك. Now we're gonna cover or see, we always talk about the Blue Mountains in Australia. We're gonna see a small video and you tell us. So His Excellency, it's 3 hours driving by car from Sydney. And
Yeah.
And if I want to go from Lebanon now, how long does it take? It's really amazing. It's nice. It's beautiful. And it's the greater blue of those mountains. Why do we call them Blue Mountains?
Yeah, it's because of the trees. We have eucalypts in Australia. The eucalypts are our native species, and the gas they release gives it this blue colour. So when you look at it, the mountains from a distance, they have this light blue sort of haze around them, and that's from the trees themselves. So that's why they get the name.
And tourism
Blue
industry
Mountains.
is high for sure. Certainly.
Yeah, the Blue Mountains, it's an amazing part of Australia. It's just outside of Sydney, and it rings much of Sydney. So it took the early explorers about 20 years to find a way through, because there's deep gullies and high mountains, and they were never able to find an easy way through the mountains to the inland of Australia. So it wasn't until about 1815 that the first explorers managed to cross it. But since then, because it's so close to Sydney, you've seen huge tourism growth, and you have railways up there.
It's a very important industry.
Oh, and amazing walks. Like Lebanon has the same. You're lucky in having the mountains very close to the coastline, and it's the same with the Blue Mountains. You can get up there easily from Sydney, and you can spend 2 or 3 days walking through the tracks down these very steep, narrow gorges, or up on the high ground.
So from the Blue Mountains to Northern Territory, we're gonna see the Northern Territory now.
Yeah, a very different part of Australia.
And then we move to Canberra.
Yep, a very different part of Australia.
Yeah. So really we experience the cultural diversity, and especially in Darwin, the capital, and the very vibrant nights, the belly dancing vibrant nights, the nightlife, and so on. What can you tell us?
Well, you know, we saw before the Blue Mountains, and really the Northern Territory is almost the heart of Australia. You have Uluru, which is the big rock that's almost right in the geographic centre of Australia, near Alice Springs, and it's a majestic site, very important to the Indigenous people, very
Wow.
sacred. And it changes colour. So if you get up early in the morning, as the sun rises, it changes its colours from because of the different
This
way
is
light
amazing.
refracts on it. As you go further north, it's you know, you're looking at a very desert landscape, so it's a very dry landscape. But as you go further north on the road up to Darwin, and you're talking 2,500 to 3,000 kilometres.
Yes.
As you go further north, you hit Kakadu, which is the start of the wetlands, and it's now a huge national park with very deep, again, gorges with huge, lovely pools of water and amazing landscapes, and that is now a big tourist destination for both Australians and increasingly for overseas visitors.
And we saw the painting on the stones.
That's
like
the
you
rock
said.
artwork I was saying.
Yes.
So again, a very old, some of those are 30 to 40,000 years old paintings from the Indigenous Australians up there. And the wildlife up there is also very unique. We have saltwater crocodiles.
Wow.
So you got to be careful when you go swimming.
Definitely, I will not go there all my
You,
life.
so long as you don't go swimming in areas that say don't swim, you're okay. But yeah, you've got to be careful. But again,
Don't they eat us?
they can, but you just stay out of the water and you're okay. But you can go and take river boats and see the saltwater crocodiles, and they're majestic animals. I mean, they're just
Definitely.
they're huge. You're looking at some 3 to 4 meters long, very powerful. And then of course, you've got the kangaroos as well that you find elsewhere. But amazing sort of variety, and it's very tropical. So you have the dry season and the wet season. So you got to make sure you go in the dry season.
It's mingling between the two seasons.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
From Darwin to Canberra now.
Now we go to Canberra, so
Yes.
my home.
All right. Indeed, His Excellency, it's untouchable beauty. And I'm speechless. I cannot say any word. It's very beautiful. It's very huge.
No, thank you. It's I live in Canberra now, and it's an interesting history as well, because Canberra was designed. It's a designed and planned city, and the reason it is where they put it geographically is because it's halfway between Melbourne and Sydney, and that's because at Federation, prior to 1900, each state was a colony, independent colony, and when they came together in 1900, they couldn't agree on who would be the capital, Melbourne or Sydney. So they decided to build Canberra halfway between them. So it was built in, or started off in about 1900, but a very planned city. So we had an American architect come in and town planner who designed it, and so we have a very beautiful city, a lot of green space.
It hosts a lot of events and activities.
A lot of events.
Vineyards, I love it.
And you've got the vineyards. You have museums. We've got world-renowned art galleries. The Museum of Australia as well. Parliament, the Museum to Democracy is in Canberra, and it's a beautiful natural place. Like as you said, the kangaroos there. I've seen them down my street. When you drive down, you'll see the kangaroos there, and the bird life as well.
Yes.
Then
and the Lebanese community is centered in Canberra, the capital, or no?
No, in Sydney.
In Sydney.
The Lebanese community. There are of course Lebanese Australians in Canberra as well, but the bulk are in Sydney. But once you get outside of Canberra, you're in these amazing national parks, and you get down towards the mountain. There's a mountain range between Sydney and Melbourne, the Great Dividing Range, and that's where we do get some snow, and you can go skiing in Australia as well. And the highest mountain in Australia is Mount Kosciuszko, which is about 2,200 metres, but it's a beautiful area.
I can see. Now from Canberra to Tasmania.
And now Tasmania.
Okay. Really, His Excellency, by just looking at this Tasmanian cachet and unique identity, it's a dream, to say the least for me. Yeah. It's really a dream.
No, Tasmania is it's an island at the very south of Australia, and it's interestingly the second oldest. Hobart is the second oldest settlement, European settlement in Australia.
It's an island.
Yeah, it's a separate island. It's separated by about 300 kilometres from mainland Australia. And because it's a bit further south, it has a very sort of temperate climate, and you have a temperate rainforest. It's temperate wilderness, which you don't get almost anywhere else. So very large parts of the island are untouched by humans, so you can walk through these amazing 5 or 6 day walks and not see anyone else.
Wow.
And just beautiful
in the heart of the nature.
And amazing nature, and you saw the Tasmanian devil there, the little black animal.
Yes.
That's the Tasmanian devil, which is a small, again, marsupial, but very ferocious.
Oh my God!
But it's very small. So.
It is small, but it is wild.
No, so but a lovely, just again the nature. They only come out at night, and they're quiet. But once if they're attacked, then they become, they will attack back. But it is and what we're seeing with Tasmania recently is this focus on food and wine. So a lot of food and wine industries have grown there.
Now from Tasmania to the Great Barrier.
Okay, yes.
Okay. So the Great Barrier is the great maritime activity, I can say.
Yeah, so the Great Barrier Reef lies off Queensland, and it's the only sort of living organism you can see from space, because it's the largest reef in the world, and I think goes for about 2,500 kilometres. So a beautiful stretch of coastline. And if you're into diving or any water sports,
And a lot of tourists.
and a lot of
definitely.
tourists go there, and so you can go diving and see some of the most amazing reef in the world, as well as the fish life is incredible. So a very beautiful area. And then on the coast, again, there's some amazing forests. We have the Daintree Forest up near Cairns, which is one of the oldest rainforests in the world. And again, you walk through and it's really like stepping back in time. Very beautiful area.
So His Excellency, after having covered incredibly amazing cities and areas in Australia, we're gonna cover a long way from home. It's an Australian Memorial Act by His Excellency, Mr. Miles Glenn. What can you tell us about the Australian forces in Lebanon from 941 till 942? And this is a book. Please. Go ahead.
Well, most people don't realise that Australian troops were here both in 1918 but in 1941. So when France was occupied and you had the Vichy French take over control of Lebanon in 1940, the Australian force or the Allied troops decided to take Lebanon, and so British and Australian troops came in to Lebanon, and the bulk of the troops were actually Australian. So we had 20,000 Australian troops come in 1941 into Lebanon and fight a campaign against the Vichy, and were ultimately successful. But it was it was a short but quite bloody campaign. But after that, the Australian troops stayed for about another year here in Lebanon. And the fascinating thing is that we had 3 excellent photographers, all of whom went on after the war and created names for themselves in photography. And they
Eddie
went
Schweire?
through, not Eddie, no. No, these are Australian photographers.
You're talking about the Australians,
The
first
Australians,
ones,
yeah.
yes.
So these Australians went around the whole of Lebanon and took this amazing collection of photographs. And if you go onto the Australian War Memorial website, which is awm.gov.au, and you type in Lebanon, you will come up with about 2,000 photographs of Lebanon in 1941, and it's probably one of the best records.
And we can
I've
see
seen.
this in the book.
Yeah, so these are just a snapshot of some of the photos.
Very old photos, His Excellency.
That you can see, and we've got from everything from Beirut in 1941, St George's Hotel. We've got that's near Dog River, up in the mountains. Of course, our troops were up there. But also some amazing shots of the Bekaa. That's from Qanat el Sauda, or close to Qanat el Sauda, the highest mountain in Lebanon, looking back down over the valley.
This is Bsharri?
Yeah, that's looking down into
Bsharri.
Bsharri.
Yes.
Of course, Baalbek.
Baalbek, yes.
And so there's this incredible record. That's off the coast of near Beirut. So
yes.
yeah, and I think people just don't realise that and it's again Bsharri, as we see with the skiing.
Wow. Yes.
And but what's interesting is when the battle happened, one of the first Australians who was killed was actually a Lebanese Australian. So Nicholas Curry, who was killed in the first few days of the campaign. But it just goes to show how long the links are back into between Lebanon and Australia. Again, looking up in the Kadisha Valley.
Wow, this is amazing and very old.
Yes, yeah.
Though it's old, but really real.
Yes, and the quality of the photographs is amazing. So I would encourage anyone to go along and have a look at if they want to see some old shots of Lebanon. And I mean, this is, as I said, just a very small snapshot. But we thought we'd put them into a book so that we can pass them out and just raise awareness of Australia's involvement in Lebanon, which most people have no idea about.
Definitely.
And also to show the links there, because that was the start really of the migration between Lebanon and Australia. When the Australian troops were here, They made friends with a lot of the locals people. And of course, afterwards they went, oh, maybe we'll migrate to Australia. So
and this bridge building is very important between Lebanese and
critical.
Australian people. Exactly. What's about the railway?
Yeah. So what
between Beirut and Tripoli?
Tripoli, yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's very important too.
So again, people don't realise that the railway between Beirut and Tripoli was designed and built by Australians, and they did it in just over a year, which is again, when you think of a railway like that today, would probably take about 5 years. But the bridges there are still intact, and if you look carefully, you can see what we call the Rising Sun badge, which is our army badge on the side of those bridges. But the railway ran for up until the Civil War here. And I think a lot of people would like to see it start up again, because you know, having public transportation between, or a railway between Beirut and Tripoli would be critical, I think, to going
What
forward.
was His Excellency the driven motto to put such important book in hands?
Well, I think we were looking at it, and when we go around and discuss it with people, and so many people aren't aware. They knew the British were here, but they don't realise when they say the British that actually they're talking about the Australians. So we thought it's very important to start getting out the message that actually it was Australian troops that were here.
The Australian fingerprint was
yeah,
here.
and contributed to Lebanon's independence, because that obviously had a big impact on Lebanon gaining its independence in 1943. So we thought it's an important story that needs to be told and remembered, and we thought this was the best way of doing it, because just some of those photographs of Lebanon back at that time, you don't have, or, you know, it's rare to find that sort of record of the country. So we thought it was an important part of the historical record of Lebanon.
Definitely. Where can we find this book?
If they contact the embassy, we can send out copies to people.
Sure. So His Excellency, A Long Way from Home.
Yes.
Why is that title?
Well,
why did you choose to have this title, A Long Way from Home?
Yeah, well, it's when you look at it, Lebanon to the troops, it was a long way from Australia.
Yes.
You know, you're looking at. I mean, today to fly here, it still takes roughly 24 to 26 hours, all up from door to door. So at that time,
what's
catching
about that
a ship,
time?
it would have
the
been
old
6 to 8 weeks minimum on a boat.
Oh my God.
So, and that's from Perth, so even longer if you left from Melbourne and Sydney. And so when you went,
it's about 1 month and a half. It's
yeah, and it wasn't easy to get back. So once you were there, once you were here, you were here. So you were a long way from
the fleet fighting the sea.
Exactly. So most of these troops didn't go back to Australia for another 4 or 5 years. So it was a long way from home and a long time from home.
His Excellency, before we close up our special meeting today with you, I would love to say, and I have a question I would love to ask to you. What do you like most about Lebanon? And what really had very positive impact on His Excellency during his stay in Lebanon?
Well, I was talking about it with my staff today, and saying I'm lucky because I get to travel across the whole country, and it's an amazing, a very small country, which is great because you can get to places and back quite easily. But the variety of scenery within the country is amazing. So whether you're in the mountains, on the coast, in the Bekaa, or even in the anti-Lebanon range, I've been up to Ras Baalbek, and on the weekend I was in Akkar in the very north. I've been down south as well, and the incredible beauty of the mountains. I mean, you don't get too many countries where the mountains come right up to the sea. So I think that's one. But probably the biggest thing is obviously the people. A country is made by its people, and Lebanon is that's true very much in Lebanon's case. The people are incredibly friendly and hospitable. I mean, often, we talk about a post being a certain amount of kilograms, how much weight you put on, and Lebanon
heavy gastronomy.
Lebanon's one of the worst for that because you put on a lot of weight. So, but the hospitality, the openness, the thing I find most is that people are open. They'll invite you into their homes, and they'll talk to you openly about.
Thank you, because you have a great heart.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's a great country to be posted in.
Thank you, sir. And what is your message to Lebanese community in Australia and to the Lebanese people in Lebanon?
Well, yeah, we have a big Lebanese community in Australia. In the recent elections, I think there was more Australian Lebanese registered to vote than any other country higher than the US, Europe, or Canada. And so they maintained very strong links. Now, last year we had about 80,000 Australians visit, and the bulk of those obviously are Australian Lebanese who have connections back into the country. And as someone was actually someone here was saying to me in one of their speeches, and they said, for Lebanese Australians, you should think of Lebanon as your mother. You can't change your mother, and you have to love her for what she is. Australia is your wife.
True.
You get to choose your
True.
wife, and you've chosen Australia, and you love your wife just the same, and you can love both. And I think that's the important message, that you can, as an Australian Lebanese, you can love Lebanon and you can love Australia. And and I think that's the great thing about the community. I see that in, we're up north, and everywhere you go up north, there's Australian Lebanese, and they all very proud to be Australian. The first thing they'll say to you, I'm Australian, I'm so proud to be Australian, but at the same time they'll say, but I love Lebanon. And I think that's such a nice...
And Lebanon and the Lebanese people really love you.
No, thank you for that. It's got to say, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Glenn Miles, His Excellency Ambassador of Australia to Lebanon, you're most welcome with us, and best of luck and endeavors for any future step. Thank you, sir.
شكرا كثير, and thank you for this.
مشاهدينا بريك صغير ونرجع لكم. مشاهدينا رجعنا لكم من البريك. لقائنا نحن والسيدة جيما هاجنز القائم بالأعمال في السفارة الأسترالية في لبنان. Hello, Mrs. Gemma.
Hello, Joel. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm excited to be with you today.
Thank you for being with us in Mariam TV Plateau. You're most welcome. We have a lot of things to cover. We're going to start with women issues, then moving to gastronomy in Australia, then child education, and so on. And there is wine production.
Excellent.
This is a very important part of this episode. So if you're going to talk about women, it refers to cultural diversity, as we know, and dating back, going back to history, and to now, women has changed a lot in election, in parliament, and in society. What can you tell us, please?
I think Australia has had remarkable progress for women in the past 100 years. We gave women the right to vote in 1902, and today we have a lot of women as politicians and CEOs of Australian companies. We've had an Australian Prime Minister who's a woman, Julia Gillard, who was very famous, and we've also had some heads of our...
Edith Cowan in 1921.
That's right.
Yes.
Oh, she was a minister.
In the yes.
Not a Prime Minister.
Yes.
So a parliamentarian, and we currently have two heads of our states who are female premiers, so that's very good.
Yes.
The best thing about Australia these days is that we have strategy. Most other companies, or even my own department, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, have women in leadership strategies.
Yes.
So we're all very focused about making sure there's, when you're looking at senior people within companies or within departments, that 50% of those positions are held by women. And that's very important for the workplace and for business, because history and statistics have shown that women's leadership
it's very important.
It is important. It improves the organisation. It's profitable. Economies function better, and economic growth increases when there are more women in these positions.
Definitely. Why do you think? What's the secret?
I think
feminism.
It's feminism, but I think women are more empathetic. I think we can multitask, we can see things from different angles.
Yes.
And it's not just, when you're looking at sort of diversity in the workplace, it is not just a women's issue, it's greater diversity of all different backgrounds, different ages, different cultures.
Though they are sensitive.
They are sensitive.
No, don't you agree?
Yes, we are more sensitive, but I think we like to see things from a different picture, and
Yes.
and I think we're more collaborative and more consultative.
Yes.
So women tend to consult everyone, whereas men sometimes I don't think do as much of that.
Talking now about men and women, what do you think of gender equality in Australia
I think
nowadays?
we're getting there, where we need to do more.
We're almost there.
No, I would say we're better than most others. I think Australia does really well, but
Yes.
we need to try harder. We need to give women more opportunities. We need to understand that balancing being a mother and someone in a position in the workplace is hard. And
This question I'm going to ask it
Yeah.
to you, Gemma,
yeah,
by the end of this meeting. Yes.
yeah. So I think we could do better on women in boards. We have women directors in some of our Australian Stock Exchange companies on the boards, but we could do better. We could do better with politicians. We need more female candidates in our cabinet.
Yes.
More politicians who are women. We need to do more, but we're doing well.
Exactly. In your capacity as deputy head of mission in the Australian embassy, Gemma, as a mother, how do you balance home and career in a perfect way?
In a perfect way. There is no
Or
perfect.
it's not a perfect way.
No, there is no perfect way, but there is certainly steps towards perfection. So one of the good things is to have a workplace who recognises flexible working arrangements. So that means that you don't have to be in the office at 9 o'clock. You don't have to be in the office till 5. You can come earlier, stay later. Come early, stay late, and take 2 hours in the middle of the day. It's about recognising that people just are there to get their jobs done. It doesn't mean set hours.
Yes.
You can be coming in on the weekends and taking a day off.
Exactly.
It's all about being flexible with that time, and I think being responsive to sort of your duties at home.
And being productive in work, definitely.
Absolutely, you have to be more productive.
Yeah, sure.
But you also have to have understanding supervisors and managers. I have been very fortunate at the embassy because the ambassador recognises the demands that I have on me at home, and he's more understanding and flexible, and that's the key word, flexible.
This is the most important.
In either assigning work or different responsibilities.
And last time you were saying that you love Lebanon.
I do love
For
Lebanon.
how long have you been here?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
What do you like most about Lebanon, Gemma?
I love the food. I think
Now we're gonna move to the gastronomy
later,
in Australia.
but I can talk about other things. I think Lebanon is extremely unique. I think it's unique in so many ways. It's unique in culture. It's unique in the fact that 18 different civilizations have lived here.
Were you expecting this when you first came to Lebanon?
I didn't. Lebanon, obviously, it's in the Middle East, but it's not really, to me, the Middle East. It's part of the Mediterranean.
Yes.
It's got a very strong Mediterranean culture that's rich in family and tradition and food and the outdoors and nature. I think Lebanon is very different from any other country in the Middle East, and it feels it's wonderful, and you won't see the things in Lebanon anywhere else in the world.
So if you are chosen to stay more in Lebanon, would you?
I would definitely stay more. I might move housing though. I live in Jamaica.
Yes.
It's quite hectic. I might like to go somewhere a bit more quiet.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Now, if you're gonna go to Australia and to talk about gastronomy, what's the main dish,
In
nature
Australia?
color in Australia?
Oh, it's so hard because Australia is very diverse. You know, because we're such a large continent. You know, seafood is very big in Australia because we have beautiful, pristine oceans.
And the 6th largest country in the world by
And
area.
exactly. But we have great organic fruits and vegetables. We have great meat, obviously. We're a big meat exporter also to the Middle East and to Lebanon. We export Australian lamb and beef, which you'll see in all the restaurants here in Beirut.
Yes.
So we have everything in Australia is really fresh.
The sheep meat and goat, no?
We do have some goat, but we also have other very strange types of meat like kangaroo, and we have camel as well.
Wow.
We export camel meat.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then it's mixed up with?
I don't know. I think I'm not sure what people eat it with. Kangaroo is an interesting meat. It's best in a curry or a barbecue.
Oh my God. Did you taste it?
Yes, it's very strong.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And you have this courage to eat it?
Yes. Yeah. I know, not many people do.
I will be the first one not to taste it.
Yeah, I know that's okay. It's very strange to eat and it's a national emblem
Exactly.
of Australia.
The symbol of
Yeah,
Australia.
exactly. We eat our symbol.
You're eating your symbol.
Yeah, that's right.
So if we're gonna move to other dish, main dish in Australia, what can you tell us?
What's a main dish? The meat pie, of course. You've heard of the meat pie?
Yes, sure.
So it's a classic Australian dish. It's just it's a stew basically in pastry.
Assorted with
With beef, sometimes vegetables. It can be a chicken pie, but generally it's a beef Australian pie served with tomato sauce. So it doesn't sound very gourmet, but it's definitely one of the more traditional foods. But the thing about Australia is we really don't have too many national dishes because we're so multicultural.
Yes.
To be honest, if you go to Melbourne, a great tradition to do in Melbourne is to go to a Lebanese restaurant.
Yes.
Because we have so many Lebanese migrants there.
Exactly.
So when we have Chinese and Thai and Vietnamese and Korean, Japanese, it's
a multinational kitchen.
Exactly.
Yes.
Australians always struggle when they go overseas because we go to countries where the cuisine can be quite mono. It's only sort of one thing, whereas in Australia, every night you eat Thai, then you eat Japanese, and you eat Italian.
What's about the breakfast, Gemma?
Australian breakfasts are very famous.
Australian breakfast, yes.
Well, I think we're becoming very famous internationally we've been exporting Australian brunches. So it's like smashed avocado on toast with poached eggs.
Oh my God, it's very heavy.
Yeah.
Don't you exercise?
We do a lot of exercise.
Okay.
But yeah, things like that, fresh juices, muesli.
The coffee.
Australian coffee is excellent.
Yes.
I'm not sure, have you been to
Coffee production is very important in Australia too.
Yes, there is some coffee production, though we do import a lot, but the way we roast the coffee is very specialised.
Wow.
So we have an Australian coffee place in Jamaisi, actually,
Give me the address without advertising.
Yeah.
after the show.
Yeah.
So how do you mix it?
The coffee?
Yes.
Have you heard of the flat white?
Not really.
So Australia, everywhere around the world is starting to serve flat whites.
Okay.
You have a shot of coffee, a shot of espresso,
All right.
maybe halfway up, and then the rest is just hot milk.
Hot milk.
And that is it's called the flat white.
So the coffee shot mixed up with hot milk.
Yep.
And then?
And that's it. It's just in it's a smaller cup, not a mug. And that's the Australian coffee, really.
Yummy. It must be delicious.
Yes.
I'm a coffee aholic.
Yeah. All Lebanese are.
Just to wake up in the storm of this mess. Another question to you before moving to child education, Gemma. What can you tell us about the desserts?
Oh, the desserts. I guess we have a lot of
apple pie.
We have the apple pie. Yes, we have the apple pie, the pavlova.
Okay.
Which is very famous. And you know the pavlova? It's like meringue. It's sort of egg whites made into sort of a cake, baked, covered with fresh cream and fresh fruit. And so that's delicious. What else do we have?
At what time of the day do we take it?
Oh, lunch.
We have to count the calories.
Yeah, I know, exactly. After the avocado on toast, you can't have it. You have it for dinner, after dinner, of course. But that's very classic, the pavlova and the lamingtons.
Yes.
You've heard of the lamingtons?
No, tell us more.
Which is the sponge cake rolled in sort of a chocolate sauce covered in coconut.
Yummy.
Yep.
So sponge cake.
Yep.
Rolled up with
chocolate sauce.
And covered up with
coconut. Yep.
It must be delicious.
It is delicious.
Yes.
Yep.
Do you cook?
I do cook. My husband cooks more. He does Mexican food, so
yummy.
Yeah, it's nice.
It must be very delicious.
Yeah.
After gastronomy, Gemma, we're gonna move to child education in Australia. We know that children are our generation, new generation. It's our future. What do you think about children education in Australia, and how do you raise up your child?
I think I have a lot of trust in the Australian education system.
Yes.
A lot of it's based on a lot of research and very focused on education being the future of any nation. So I think I'm very happy also in Australia that there is private and public, and the public education system in Australia is very good too. So you don't have to worry about, like not everyone can afford to take their kids to a private school, But in Australia, I think you can be comforted by the fact that public schools is just as good.
Yes.
So that's comforting.
In which criteria and norms? Tell us more, please.
I think outdoor education is huge. I think one of the things where we're leading in the world is the fact that we're still getting our kids out and about, learning about physical education, their own health, what to eat right, how to be healthy. I think we're teaching kids more about nature and about how to treat the world. So we're talking about
to love the environment.
To love the environment.
Exactly.
Australians, you know, to clean up after yourself.
How do they treat the environment in Australia?
Like it's a gift.
Wow.
It's, you know.
A lot of awareness campaigns in this regard.
Exactly.
From where do they start?
From kindergarten.
Oh my God.
From when you're 5 years old and you go to school, you learn that littering is bad.
Wow.
And you should never do it. And you can see in Australia there is no litter anywhere.
Yes.
Because people are educated to not litter. It's very important.
And from the kindergarten till universities, do you think the norms of keeping or preserving nature, is it the same? Or does it decrease with time because you
I
change?
No, I think it's always been a huge focus, and I think now across all of Australia, either in the schools, the hospitals, we have recycling programs, we have reusable, anything. It's all about making sure there's no waste. We want a zero waste equation, and that's all through education these days. And we started this maybe 40 years ago. So I'm turning 40 next year, and I have to say that people from my generation are very well educated now on what it means to keep the environment pristine.
This is amazing. How do they raise awareness in the public establishments? How do they go to this child and touch his heart, touch his mind, make him understand the essential of things?
I think you can see it in wildlife. You know, I remember from a very young age seeing pictures of seagulls with rubbish around their neck, or even the fish or dolphins wrapped up in rubbish. It's all about sort of seeing the consequences of your littering. Even the Great Barrier Reef, if we don't preserve the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, we have a situation where you go diving and you see a Coke can next to a reef. It's terrible. And so, you know, from a very young age, you know that this is the consequence of littering. You are bleaching the reef. The reef is no longer as colourful as it once was. It's now white. It's about seeing that animals are suffering from your littering. And we should not have a situation where there are birds with little plastic rings around their neck.
Gemma, if you're going to talk about NGOs, non-governmental organizations and other nations, committees and commissions in Australia, what can you tell us?
We have a lot of NGOs in Australia that are also operating internationally, including in the region. They do very, obviously, they do very good work, I guess, supporting other Australians in need, Australians who don't have the same sort of opportunities that others.
Deprived ones, you mean?
Exactly. Australia does have people in need, I think, and we need to sort of...
As regards what?
People who need help either raising their children, with housing, with clothes, with transport. We do have homeless in Australia.
Homeless?
We still have a homeless, a number of, I guess, people that need shelter.
Yes. And those people are locals, you mean?
Yes, Australians. And we are, yeah, we definitely. No, a lot of Australians just who need to be lifted out of poverty.
Okay. And what's about the poverty ratio in Australia? Almost.
I don't think I have the statistic on that actually. I wouldn't.
Is it a high one or?
No. It's not. It's not incredibly high, but it is there.
It is there. About those NGOs, what more? What is the objective, the mission, as regards Australian nation state?
I don't know if I could answer to that. Sorry, it's definitely not my expertise.
Yes.
Yeah, no.
No worries. The most important that they are acting under very good umbrellas and they are doing the utmost of what they have.
Exactly.
So, Gemma, if we want to go back to women, talking about women in Australia, do you think women can make such a big change in the Australian territory? Do you believe in women? Do you believe she can raise the umbrellas of much more freedom?
I think we can. I think We can do more. But one thing we need to do is need to get the support of men to do it. There's a really important UN campaign called He for She.
Yes.
And it's about sort of encouraging men.
He for She?
He for She.
Wow, this is an amazing title.
It's great.
Yes.
It was launched by the actress Emma Watson, I think about 4 or 5 years ago in New York.
Wow.
But it's very important because it's recognising that it's not just up to women to take forward these issues, it's about men doing it as well.
To support her.
Exactly, and that includes things like people like my own supervisor, the ambassador, who gives me opportunities as a woman to progress and to improve my skills. It's about men taking more of a role at home and staying home and looking after children. My husband's doing that at the moment here in Beirut. He is the primary caregiver and he looks after our children while I work.
Warm greetings to your husband.
Thank you. So it's about all those things. It's about men allowing more space for women to have a voice.
Yes.
So I think men need to play a role in this as well, because only all of us together can make sure women are more equally represented in the workplace, to make sure we get equal pay, to make sure we all get given the same opportunities.
But you know, women has maternity, they have maternity, they have a lot of interruption throughout their career.
Exactly,
life.
it's hard.
Do you think it's gonna work 100% or no?
I think it does, because I think it's, for example, I have some friends at the moment who she had a baby about 6 months ago. She has taken 6 months off her career.
It's too much. It's important.
It is, but she's back at work, and now her husband has left his career, and he's
as per the labor code, Gemma, 6 months.
It's 14 weeks paid, but you can
Yes.
take so it's about the same actually as Lebanon.
Yes.
But though that said, we can extend that over a year.
Sabbatic year, yes.
Yeah, but the good thing is now we also have paternity leave for men. So the woman goes back to work.
Wow, this is perfect.
Exactly, and the man. So my friend James.
For how long?
For 3 months.
Paternity leave.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Starting from when?
Whenever. So if the woman goes back to work, then the man can go home and get paid for 3 months and look after children.
This in one condition that the woman works.
She doesn't have to.
If the woman is working.
No, she doesn't have. It can be flexible. But
both of them can take the maternity and paternity leave at the same time?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this law is executed in Australia only, or all over the world?
I'm not sure. I think the UK, well, it's certainly the same in Sweden, Norway, Finland and Denmark.
This is perfect flexibility.
It's amazing.
They should be lucky.
Yeah, they are very lucky.
And after the paternity leave for 3 months,
they have to go back to work.
Resumes his work, his
Yeah.
task.
Yes.
What do you think of this system, Gemma?
I think
Do you
it's
like it?
I like it. I think it's an improvement.
Yes.
I think we need to head more the way that Sweden and Norway have done, where parents can take up to a year off and get paid. I think, it's all about parents need to be at home with the children.
Yes.
Obviously,
both of them.
Exactly.
Exactly.
They need a father and a mother, or a mother and a mother, or a father and a father, I think. But they need their parents at home for some time, and the government should support that.
And the system should be everywhere.
Yes.
In all the world.
Hopefully. Wouldn't that be nice?
Thank you, Gemma, for being with us today in Miriam TV Plateau in a small word message to Lebanon, to Lebanese community in Australia. What would you like to say?
Thank you for making Australia so rich with your culture and your history and your food and your presence.
Thank you, Mrs. Gemma. Best of luck for any future endeavor that you may take in your life and any new trip that you may embark upon.
Great. Thank you so much, Joelle.
Thank you. مشاهدينا لقائنا لليوم نحن وياكم من سفرة مع سفير خلص حتى لقاءات أخرى، وبدعكم أنا جويل وبقول لكم الله معكم.